Welcome to Real Guys Fishing. We're prepping to go musky fishing. Welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time, welcome to the channel. Please click subscribe if you like what you see. So I'm getting ready to head up north to the northwoods of Wisconsin for a fall musky trip. So I thought I'd do a video on what it takes to kind of prep my boat, to prepare my equipment, some lure selection, some bait prep, and kind of get you ready for what I use to give me a nice successful musky trip in the late fall in northern Wisconsin. Hey, before we go any further, I want to talk about invasive species spread from lake to lake. As I said, I'm taking my boat up to the northwoods of Wisconsin. So before I head up there, I need to get whatever I got on the last lake off of my boat so I don't bring all that up north when I catch some nice big muskies. So I clean the outside of my boat, and I especially get all the stuff off my trailer, including my bunks as best I can. I also have vacuumed out the inside of my boat so I don't have algae and grass and stuff from the last lake and bring it up to that new lake.
Is he ready to go? There he goes!
Wisconsin is home to some of the best Class A musky lakes in the nation. It's important we protect this fishery for future generations, because musky are so gosh darn delicious. Totally kidding, we don't eat the musky. We catch and release them with as little handling as possible. But invasive plant species can lead to unnatural weed growth and choke out this natural tannic water lake. As the drone flies over towards the resort house, you'll see that we came up with not just one, but a fleet of 3 boats. These boats probably visited a combined 20 to 30 lakes last year alone. We fishermen need to clean our boats between lakes to stop spreading plant matter from lake to lake. This is a group effort, and it matters to the future of the fishery. Alright, so I'm sitting in my boat and I've got a bunch of stuff in here just kind of sitting around right now. I'm still putting everything away. But you can see that I'm going up to the northwoods and I'm going to spend a week up there. So I'm actually going to launch my boat at one place, stay at a resort, and have to tie up to their dock. So I've got some pads for the dock. I also have some boat bumpers that are laying around in the boat. I've got a heavy-duty, extra-long extension cord so I can charge my electronics at night. It's been my experience that if you run your electronics musky fishing, you don't use your big motor a whole lot. So if you're running your electronics off of the main boat battery like I do, you can run into a situation where you might start to have low voltage issues over the course of a week. It's not uncommon for me to just go to one spot and then drift for hours, start the motor for a few minutes, go to the next spot, and then drift again for hours, running my batteries down. So I always make sure I plug in every night. I also have an insulated bait cooler up here with an aerator. That's my small one. I've got 2 other big ones behind me over here. You have to have an aerator if you plan on transporting sucker minnows any distance at all. And it's insulated so I can keep the nice cold water cold, and that aerator runs and keeps oxygenating those fish so they don't die before I get to my lake. Earlier in the video I mentioned having a big cooler to have the sucker minnows in, and this is what I've done. I bought 2 of these little aerators and I plugged in there. I drilled holes above the water line of this really big cooler, and on the inside I've got an aerator. That's the other one. So the sucker minnows have a long way to swim from side to side, and I can keep them alive for long periods of time. Sucker minnows are pretty big. Alright, so baits. When I go up to northern Wisconsin in the late fall, sucker minnows are a big deal. We always run our sucker minnows on quick strike rigs, which I'll show you a couple of them later on in the video. So here's some aerial footage of us using some sucker rigs, and you can see one of my fishing partners pulling in what appears to be a nice big fish. That's not a fish that we caught. That's one of our sucker minnows. That's the bait fish. That's how big these things are. He's peeling off all the seaweed that's got caught up on that quick strike rig that I talked about earlier. But you can see we've got really nice stout poles. We've got roughly a 100-pound test line and some really large bobbers. At this point we're just kind of using the drift to try to attract those fish on those sucker minnows and see what we can find, and put in that gigantic net that's hanging up in the air. This dangerous contraption is a circle hook rig. You can't use it in Wisconsin. It's illegal. The mortality to the muskie on these circle hook rigs was almost 90%. So that's out. Instead, have to use a quick strike rig whenever you're fishing for muskie. These are all commercially available quick strike rigs. If you're using live bait to fish for muskie in Wisconsin, you have to use a quick strike rig. Now, I'll do a video on how I build my sucker rigs, but just know that none of these are what I use on my boat. I actually use a sucker rig that I build myself. These are all quick strike rigs, different ways of attaching them to the sucker. This one uses a hook to go through the sucker's mouth. This one uses a rubber band setup to go through the nasal passages of a sucker minnow. This one has a clip. This clip actually goes into the nasal passages of the sucker minnow. The important part is this part is designed to break off of your sucker when you set the hook, and these treble hooks in the back are what gets set into the muskie's mouth in theory. Sometimes you put a weight on it, sometimes you don't, but you always have to have a bobber that is labeled so the muskies know which way to pull their bobber. So here's my muskie bobber with a nice label, let them know which way to pull it. All right, so here's the reality of muskie fishing. The three of us are absolutely soaking wet. We haven't caught but we tend to throw a lot of rubber baits this time of year. And then I don't bring every lure that I own. I kind of cherry pick what I want to put in the box because you run out of so much space in your boat with these big musky lures. So I bring a bunch of different rubber lures. And I also have these dive and rise baits. This is a brand new one. But in the fall, I want to be able to target a little bit deeper than in the spring or early part of the summer. And these baits out of the box, I buy them so they run a little shallower, but they've got weight kits. This is a weight kit from the Suet company. And I'll show you how to put a weight kit on here so I can get this down a little bit deeper into that water column. All right, so here's the Suet weight kit. It's a weight kit that comes with some inserts. It's from the Suet company, it says right there. It's a SWK7, and it came with some directions here, so of course I guess, you know, you throw those away somewhere. Who uses directions? Ain't nobody got time for that. But what I want to do on my lure is I want to have a spot near the front and then between the last two hooks up in the back where I can put those inserts and I can add weights to make this thing run like I want. And I'm an overachiever, so I already kind of made, see if I can focus it, I already made a black dot here and a black dot there to show me where to drill. And it's a 5/32 drill bit, and I've marked it with electrical tape to the depth that I want to drill to. And after I get this hook out of my finger, I'll go ahead and drill the holes right through there. Alright, so I'm getting ready to drill this, and I don't want to drill all the way through the bait. I just want to drill to the depth of the insert. And like I said, I marked that with some electrical tape. So I'm just going to line this up on my black dot that I made. And slowly, and right down to the depth of that electrical tape. I just stop pressing and just grind it out just a little bit more. And now I'm going to grab one of these knurled ends, and I can put a little bit of super glue on there, and I'm just going to tap it into place right there, and it's supposed to hold itself right in. And you'll want to use a hammer that's not going to screw up your, these are just little brass inserts. So I'm going to use a non-marring hammer. I got my little non-marring hammer. I already pounded one up top there, and so now I've got the other one ready to go. I'm just going to tap that in the side. And it's your choice. You can either, you know, put this up here on the rail of your zillion-dollar boat and pound on it, or you can put it on your overly expensive cooler and pound it on either way. But the important thing is you don't want to damage that brass insert. I'm tapping with a little brass hammer. And they're nice and flush. Now they're ready to get the weight screwed into them. And here's one of the weights. You can see it's got a threaded insert in there. And I'm going to put the heavier one at the back and a lighter one at the front. So when this dice and rive bait goes through the water, it ends up being kind of nose up with the tail being further down, kind of like a dying fish. And start them in there. And then finish it up with a screwdriver, because there is a spot on there. Make sure you hold on to this thing tight so you don't spin this lure in a circle and cut yourself on your fingers. These hooks are awfully sharp. And there they are, all weighted up. Part of being prepared to go musky fishing is having the right equipment in your boat. You can see we've got a nice full-size musky net that we just pulled that musky out of. We had wire cutters, we had needle nose pliers, we had hook cutters ready to go to get the hooks out of that musky without damaging it. It's important to keep these out of the water as little as possible and treat them very delicately. He's actually sitting on a pre-moistened measuring board. My partner had the camera ready to go. They already took my picture. I get the muskie back in the water and a little bit of stimulation, and off he goes into the water. We want to catch these fish a second, third, fourth, fifth time if we can. All that's left to do here is the high five, and then we're ready to go. And there's the high five. To close out this video, I'm just going to remind you to prepare for the weather. It's going to get cold up there in the North Woods, but if you prep for it, it'll be okay. Remember to bring the proper tools to remove hooks out of those muskies, and sometimes the hooks out of yourself. Bring along your big rubber baits, and if you use live bait, use quick strike rigs. You're going to spend a long time in the boat, so bring along some food, and it's always more fun if you have your friends.